everyone, this is Dr. V, and this video is trying to answer the question who or what is Inspector Goole, and then whether he is real or not, and if that really matters. Okay? Right. Let's talk about some terms and concepts first. An Inspector Goole is a play which is called a morality play. Now, a definition which can be found at this link here of a morality play says that this is an allegorical drama popular in Europe, especially during the 15th and 16th centuries, in which the characters personify moral qualities such as charity or vice, or abstractions as death or youth, and in which moral lessons are taught. Now, to personify here, if you don't know, means to stand for, to represent. All right? And obviously, we have some moral lessons taught in this play. 95%, if not more, of students, if asked, will say that an Inspector Goole is a play about social responsibility, and this is a moral lesson which we need to learn. Right. The adjective allegorical is derived from the noun allegory, which, according to Cambridge Dictionary, refers to a story, play, poem, picture, or other work in which the characters and events represent particular qualities or ideas that relate to morals, religion, or politics. So going back to the initial question of who is the inspector, do we really know who the inspector is? And more importantly, does it really matter if he is real or not? The name itself is strange, and Priestley chose his name probably because it sounds like the noun ghoul, which informally used refers to someone who is very interested in death and unpleasant things, according to the same dictionary. Now, we will all agree that the inspector is bringing some gory details of the death of the female protagonist, one of the female protagonists, and that he is quite descriptive when he refers to how she died. Before going any further, we need to remember quite clearly that all the voices of all the characters in a play or a novel or even a poem are not actually real. They all belong to the author. They are author's voices. The characters are used by the author to express different various views according to his intention, or her intention for that matter. Now, in this play, the strongest voice belonging to the author is obviously Inspector Goole. He is using his voice to express his socialist ideas, which were very well known at the time the play was published. And probably there is no coincidence that this play was first performed in Moscow. Him being a socialist author, Moscow being the capital of the Soviet Union. So I don't think there was a coincidence. Actually, he himself sent the manuscript to Moscow. The inspector, the strongest voice of the author in this play, acts like a megaphone, by means of which the author is voicing his political ideas loud and clear. Maybe the lack of clarity which is there, and lack of details about the inspector's identity, is meant to make us focus not on who he is, but on what he comes to do, which is to deliver a message. The Inspector Goole is clearly a controversial character, and many members of the audience and specialists alike have tried to offer an explanation for his ambiguous identity. In order to understand him better and the reasons for which Priestley created such a character, we need to search some background knowledge. Priestley was fascinated with circularity and time, and we might find quite easily some circular motives and themes and structure in the play itself. One of the people who heavily influenced Priestley, was this Russian philosopher, Peter Uspensky. He was born towards the end of the 19th century and died in October 1947, and he was very much interested in esoteric knowledge, which means he was interested in mysteries and the mystical knowledge of the universe and how we understand the world around us. Now, the adjective esoteric itself means that, or refers to something which is restricted to or intended for an enlightened or initiated minority, a small group of people. So esoteric knowledge wouldn't be something accessible by the large public. All right? Uspensky treats time as a fourth dimension, supporting the theory of eternal recurrence. Okay, now eternal return, also known as eternal recurrence, is a philosophical theory according to which the universe and all existence and energy has been recurring and will continue to recur in a self-similar form an infinite number of times across infinite time or space. Now, what we need to clearly understand is that recurrence means something happening again. So eternal or forever recurrence is quite essential when you try to understand the Inspector Goole. How is this related to an Inspector Goole, you might ask? Well, to answer this question, we need to have a look at what Priestley himself once wrote. Well, in 1972, the Mermaid Theatre, which was performing this play, introduced a note in their program which was written by Priestley himself years before. Right, in this program note, Priestley mentioned something about the curious history of the play, how this was performed in Moscow the first time, that it was translated in many languages. For instance, he mentions the 1600 performances in Germany alone, and the fact that he himself had the chance to watch the play in various cities around the world. But what's very important here is a mention he makes between brackets towards the second half of the note, and I copied it here for a better understanding. Priestley says there, when referring to the vivid debates that were generated by the identity of the Inspector Goole, he says, and I quote, "Oddly enough, they never asked about the second inspector who was on his way, though this is not simply a dramatic twist, but really the key to the play." So in the author's opinion, the person who wrote, imagined, who gave identity to these characters, the key to the play is the second inspector. How is that? Well, this sentence might not make a lot of sense in itself until you connect the dots and take the recurrence theory into account, as well as Priestley's fascination with time. Remember the eternal recurrence? Well, this can also explain why the inspector is often described as omniscient, which means he knows everything. Well, maybe this is not the first time he is interrogating the characters. He has had access to Eva's diary more than once. This is why probably he knows things so well. He knows everything even before the questions are being answered. From this perspective, the first and the second inspector are one and the same person, with the mention that the first time he shows up, he is using an ominous name, given to him by the author, obviously, meant to have a psychological impact on both the audience and the rest of the characters. Now, this is why there is no Inspector Goole registered with the local police. Remember, Gerald makes a phone call to inquire about the inspector, and the answer he receives says there is no Inspector Goole in our records. Good. Well, based on this background knowledge, now we could draw the conclusion that Inspector Goole's purpose is to set the scene and get the characters ready for the real inspector. And from this angle, what happens in the play might be considered a rehearsal for the real questioning that is announced towards the end of the play. By sending the omniscient Inspector Goole first, Priestley is giving the Burlings and Gerald a second chance to fully understand their mistakes and accept responsibility for their acts when the real inspector arrives. Well guys, I hope you find this video helpful. Please like it and drop a line if you want me to make other videos about other topics of your interest. Have a good day.